In this video series, I'll be reviewing builds from this league, both popular or bait. The goal here is to provide an objective overlook on the performance of these builds at the endgame. The primary target for these builds are for those who are interested in rerolling a new build and already have the currency to do so. I see plenty of people ask, I found a mirror, what should I play? Or, what should I reroll to with the Mage Blood and 700 Divines? By going over the strengths and weaknesses of each build, and testing builds through some of the hardest endgame monthly content, I hope to provide both meaningful and useful information for all exiles. Archmage is a popular archetype this league, focusing around the Archmage support gem. This support gem adds lightning damage to our spells based on our unreserved maximum mana. The trade-off is that it also adds 5% of unreserved maximum mana as our mana cost. As such, the focus of this build is to increase our reserves of maximum mana while trying to find sources that decrease skill costs and methods of mana recovery. It is important to note that there is no mana leech for spells in Path of Exile anymore, excluding exceptional situations. As such, mana recovery is supported by two primary methods. First, the most simple method of mana recovery is utilizing efficient sources of mana regeneration rates found across passive skill tree. The second is to utilize the stats % chance to gain 10% of mana when you use a skill found both on Mana Mastery and Watcher's Eye Clarity modifier. And finally, by starting in reduced mana cost wherever possible, we can bring down the upfront costs to just a fraction. So Archmage is the fuel for the engine, but what is the engine? Ice Nova Frostbolts is perhaps the highest damage effectiveness skill when combined with the triggered Frostbolts. Kitava's Thirst has a 50% chance to trigger Frostbolts on every Ice Nova cast, to give additional repeats for Ice Nova. This combination provides both great clear and an incredible single target while using just one button. Frostblink or Wintry Blast is a no cooldown travel skill that's downside is a poor cast time. However, with around 200% cast speed, it can be brought online to be one of the fastest movement skills in PoE. In addition, the third link can be either Spurko for faster and more chaotic movement, or Archmage support to quickly clear trash mobs on the way. The rest of the character is built around these constraints, finding life, critical, and resistance modifiers to support the Hierophant ascendancy. Offensively, this character is both tanky and squishy at the same time. Maximum hits are augmented by amount of mana, however this only lasts for the first 2 or 3 big hits. As such, this character can take a big hit, but due to the limits of mana recovery, will struggle to take any more. My twist on this build is to utilize Elemental Flask to raise our maximum resistances up to 90, depending on the role on the utmost. 5 endurance charges, critical mastery, and 4 tattoos solves our critical damage reduction, and eldritch physical damage taken as implicit finalizes our defensive wavering. Arcane Cloak, Sigil Power, and Frost Shield can add some defensive bonuses to this build, but due to the unstable nature of these buffs, I prefer to exclude them, as the weakest point of a build is what is most important, since that's when you actually die. Finally, the defenses are shored up with the utilization of Spell Suppression. Now, Spell Suppression is used on some builds of Archmage but not all. Reason being, it's very hard to get. Now, this build solves Spell Suppression by pathing pretty efficiently towards certain nodes as well as certain uncombinations. Now, this is a very endgame character, and to add in Spell Suppression was quite difficult, but obviously well worth it. Now let's first go over the mapping strategies utilized. For these builds, I like to start off with Titanic Exiles. Titanic Exiles is, I consider, a hard category, which I'm giving it a rating of 6, and we start from here and move up or down. If we move down, it's a bad sign. But, of course, this build performs spectacularly against Titanic Exiles. In general, you get a really good chill on most of the Exiles, and although you can't really get the freeze off, sometimes you can, and the clear speed is absolutely amazing. So I give this an A+ for Titanic Exiles. Moving on, we have T17 Medium for very hard, and this is Profound Abyss Delirium. Now, to elaborate on this strategy a little bit, Basically, the new Scarab from last league, Profound Depths, makes it so that each new pit in one abyss becomes harder and harder and harder. And what we're trying to do is we're going to increase the monsters here, and we're going to focus on the rare monsters. And to do this, we will give the rare monsters Nemesis, and we'll roll our maps for +2 rare modifiers for monsters. In this case, we can end up with rare monsters that are 6 to 10 modifiers long, and often these will include overlapping negative effects that will have very hard things to do for every single build. And I would say that this build is, again, performs spectacularly, as the only thing I've noticed that has an issue is when a Soul Eater monster or a no crit monster is combined with no leech, and your recovery for life leech is bricked. Moving on to our extreme category, that will be our Titanic Exiles in T17s. Now, the reason why T17s is much harder than T16s is because, well, the modifiers on the maps are harder, and the monster level is also harder. In addition, we can add on Delirium Orbs to further increase the difficulty and rewards. As a result, these Rogue Exiles are stronger and they hit you harder than T16s. However, because you can roll rarity on the map, you can get a huge quantity of uniques, and it pays off for itself. For this strategy, I have found that you actually start dying quite a bit now. So some of the exiles are strong enough to just slam you to death, and I find that even though this build is tanky, I expect to use about 3 extra portals per map. And the final challenge for our endgame strategy is T17 Pandemonium Titanic with 55 pack size and rarity rolled on the map. Now, what makes this harder than Exiles is by juicing up our uniques to now map bosses, they drop even more loot. However, to make the return worth it, we need to roll the maps with both pack size and item rarity. And by having pack size on the map, in addition with 20% pack size from chisels, we're now at 75% or more pack size, meaning the monsters and bosses in these maps are absolutely omega dangerous. I would say that I'll use around 4 to 5 extra portals and on average, and I would say that the map bosses are actually impossible, right? Besides Fortress, I think the rest are impossible. And yep, it can do it, and I've given it an A-. Okay, let's first go over the scoring scheme here. Obviously, there is no exactly average build, so these ratings will be all relative to each other. To me, average is something that makes me think decent. 6 is above average, while good and very good are 7 and 8. 10 means second to none, as in there is no other build in the game that is better than this. 9 slides in right behind as being exceptional. And of course, this is flipped towards 1 being unacceptable. Without a doubt, the easy play for Archmage is very straightforward. For me, I can hold down space and tap E, my Frostbolts, and I can clear and move throughout the map without any issues at all. So it's an easy 9. Fluidity, with the high cast speed of Frostbolts, even without Spellco, it's fast enough to controllably zoom throughout every single map. If you want to add in Spellco, you get some chaotic movements, but it's a little bit faster again. The speed. So, is there really anything faster than Frostbolts of Wintry Blast at this cast speed? I'm not sure. So for now, it's staying as a 9, but it could be possibly a 10 because it's very, very fast. So now on the map difficulty. We got through 10, and I'm going to give it a 10.5 because On some calculations, it seems to be pretty easy to get 237 rarity. Now that is not 300, but it is still a pretty decent amount for relatively free, so it is potential here. The single target is very, very good. As you can see by these clips, insta-phasing Uber Exarch, insta-phasing phase 3, phase 2 Uber Maven. Couldn't phase either, but honestly, it's just amazing. Honestly, 9.5, easy 9.5. Now here comes the first tankiness rating. Durability. I'm going to only give it a 7, because I feel like, although it's pretty good, it is not really good, and it's definitely not amazing. The max hits are very... They are acceptable. I wouldn't say that they're not bad, but you can tank many hits, but you can also get one shot by a lot of hits too. So the max hit is a very good 7. Now perhaps the worst rating here is going to be recovery. Recovery, only going to get a 3. The reason why it's pretty bad is because there's no extra way to recover mana. When you take a hit with mana recoup, it takes 4 seconds for the mana to be recouped over time. So after 1 second, you only recoup 25% of damage done. And the natural mana recovery isn't quite enough to really push it back up into full. So I'm going to give it like a, yeah, it's going to be pretty bad, because you can only take 1 or 2 big hits, and then your mana's empty, and you're relying solely on your HP and ES now. The T70 map mods are pretty straightforward. Only a few pretty bad modifiers such as no regen, no recovery, and action speed. A lot of the bad modifiers you can actually do pretty decently, so I'm gonna give it a 7. I had a good experience trying to buy maps with these map mods. And finally, Atlas bossing, as kind of ties in with single target, but very strong single target. And when I did an Uber Elder, that was very, very smooth, almost no effort required. So an easy 9. Simulacrum, 8.5. Great clear, however, due to the nature of Frostbolts traveling over a duration, it creates the effect where some mobs do actually die a little bit slower. So it doesn't clear as fast as, say, Chieftain, which is the perfect 10, and Frostblades, which is a 9.5, right? For altars, we're going to give it a 7. I feel like I click about 70% of the altars, so that's pretty good to me. Very good, actually. Future scaling, 9. There are some POBs and videos I've seen of some really high-end builds with billions of DPS, so absolutely huge future scaling. Meta attacks, well, it's actually not too bad, surprisingly. Power runes are used by all builds. Watcher's Eye is the only issue that's a little bit meta taxed because of the mana recovery. As for the rest, the uniques are shared and the rares aren't too specific for this build only. So moving on to the thoughts running the build. Now, disclaimer, it's broken down into liked, neutral, didn't like, and really didn't like. And for every build on so far, even though I like the builds a lot, I have a lot that I don't like about builds, and I'm going to voice them here. So, just to let you know, even though there's a long line of things I don't like, it doesn't mean I don't like the build. Okay, so I think this build is amazing. I think the build is really good right now, and I couldn't recommend it anymore. However, just be a warning that it might seem like I don't like the build in the following comments. First up, liked. It's very smooth to play, very fast, a very good clear, and with basically full screen iServer. And that's about it. Nothing much else I can say, as in this. That's the whole build. I liked it a lot, right? On to neutral thoughts. So, first up, it's very reliant on sources of reduced mana costs and mana recovery. Specifically, Clarity's Watcher's Eye. If you skip this part, you have a really bad time to build. So, make sure you really get this down on your build. Secondly, it's quite difficult to plan adequate timeless jewels. PB Finder can only go so far, but you still need to manually check a lot of the jewels. You can use Archmage in Frostbolts to easily clear maps, or you can use Spurko or Full Chaos for Full Chaos. Anathema is a common choice, but I felt like it was a sacrifice, not worth going for, as an 8-second one trigger was just too long to trigger the secondary, second and third curses. 8 seconds is too long. Perhaps a 4-second one trigger would have been enough to justify Anathema, but again, you're losing a ring slot. Recoms makes it much easier to craft gear, so despite it making it very cheap, the flip side is it takes a long time. So these ones took hours to reroll because some of the weightings, so Lithic is 1 in 3,000, I think, and Lich is 1 in 1,000 in terms of weighting for all durations, so have fun. And the next neutral part is Templar. I personally say it's bad, but some people might like it, so Templar is it's sort of alright. Now, moving on to didn't like. So, for this build, it is actually quite difficult to get overcap resistances while also getting suppress cap. That's my choice, right? My choice to go for suppress as well. I solved all res through devotion on Timeless Jewel with 150 devotion in the minion instability socket. Now, if you wanted to push it a little bit further, you could try dropping a flask for Bismuth Flask, which would solve many issues, but of course you lose a flask then, right? Now, you cannot take multiple big hits in a row due to mana and the issues discussed earlier. It's actually weak to degens, so there's very little regeneration, and Life Leech only goes so far. The 8-second trigger 1 mod is too unreliable for me for Frost Shield and Sigil Power. The delay between the casts and triggers is just too long to really rely on. The 4-second is probably a bit better, but still, in many situations, when you move around, they simply won't be there, right? The build is also really bad against Can't Be Leeched. Basically almost always fall over. And it's being very close to getting screwed on tributes. So I barely meet the strength cap and the dex cap for this build. Now going over what I really didn't like. Okay, I really didn't like how I can't see anything. I can't see any ground effects, I can't see any skills, almost nothing can be seen. And the performance is also atrocious. It's really bad. Like, I dropped down to 60 frames on a 4080 in a simulacrum, right? 60 frames. I think I never leave 140 besides this build. And from what I've been told, it's a paywall to improve the performance, right? So you're gonna pay for a skill transfer or skin transfer, whatever, to change Ice Nova to make it look better and to improve performance. So yeah, that's what I really didn't like. Alright, so as you can see, this build is fucking insane. If you want to reroll, do consider this. It's both fast, powerful, great mapping, great bosser, everything. The performance for this build at the budget of a Mage Blood to 500-600 Divines, so about a mirror, is just spot on. You found a mirror, or your shipment's stocked up over time? Go for it. I would highly recommend you to go to my spreadsheet. It has both the PUBs, crafting guides, and extra information about the build. If you have feedback about this build, please let me know. If you have suggestions for the next build, also let me know. I stream from time to time at twitch.tv/switscene, so hit me up there. And as always, if you enjoyed this video, that's all that matters. I'll see you next time. Bye bye.